much. But one of the things that creates the advantages in our economy is the labor market flexibility.
Right.
People can switch, get fired.
Right.
These are some of the structural headwinds that exist in Europe.
Right.
And to a larger, another extent in China. They just don't have this flexible labor market. People, when they don't have jobs, tend to get mad at the government who's giving them all their benefits. So it's actually an advantage of the U.S. economy broadly. It makes us more adaptable and more flexible.
And understand there's a lot of benefits to freelancing and from both the employer's perspective and the individual, but there's still there's 6 or 8 tests that you have to meet as a company to make sure that, hey, you're not running afoul of the IRS and paying somebody as a freelancer when they really should be an employee. The other thing is that it's not uniformly appreciated out there by employers. I've spending time with some smaller companies and folks recently, and they get the concept of the benefits of a 1099, but in some positions they just want to have somebody in position that can focus 100% on them. So that's it's not uniform in every function and every company, but it is growing a lot more. You all familiar with CNBC's Disruptor 50 list that they come out with every year? I think that's fabulous. So these are the companies out here that are using, different processes, different technology, different solutions to the same old problem and blindsiding a lot of traditional brands. I just put a couple of, I haven't even recognized half of these brands, and when I put it up, I didn't even know what they did. And but these are the new disruptors.
Have the double decker, like they take cars to the normal car dealerships, and it says Carvana on it. So now they've gone completely to the point to where now they have a distribution system. It's just like the retail car dealerships. So they're like going to eat their lunch. And these people are sitting around not knowing what to do. So.
Well, like I said earlier, as my business changed and went more heavily towards working with private equity groups, because that's where all the action was, this is, where the action is nowadays. It's all these startups, disruptors and everything. So, if you're looking to transition into a different job, you've got to have these guys on your radar screen. Definitely have to understand that. So, what's the bottom line on the digital age as we know it right now? I mean, we don't know where this is going to all play out. We're sort of in the middle of the transition. But from my perspective and what I've heard, the 2 major things are, it's about connectivity. Your smartphone is a great example of that. And the other piece of it is automation. Anything that I've missed on that? Is that fair to say? So what exactly does that mean? So this is what the Bank of England's saying. The occupation's likely to be automated. Any surprises there?
I think sales is probably a surprise there, customer service. Automating. It's frustrating. I don't know anybody who's frustrated by not being able to get papers.
Well, I think that's a good point, because the automation is coming at the front end, sort of to get you in the right queue. And eventually you'll talk to a human being, except at Google. I don't know, do any human beings work at Google? Do they really? Well, they should. They should. Yeah. I remember back in the days, was working with companies that were in direct mail. This was in the 80s, before we had all the technology that apply now. And the big debate was, well, gee, do we want to give a 800 number for them to call us or not? Because if we give out an 800 number, back in the days when, long distance calls were kind of expensive, gee, that means they won't have any reason not to call us. I think that's a good point. The technology now on home building, big discussion is about these, printers, that can, 3D printers that can build a home. So who knows what's going on there. A lot of these jobs, you know, what I see happening is that the tools of the trade will become a lot more automated, which will mean that you'll need, you know, less assistants or less helpers or less whatever.
So I think the trades will start to wane because all of this will now be automated. So will you need a plumber as much? Maybe not. Will you need an HVAC guy as much? Maybe not. You know, we need some of these other things, maybe not, you know, because now things are all this
Right.
to
Right. So what's probably going to happen is that there's going to be fewer and fewer, you know, people that actually practitioners, you know, but all the tools and support, you know, is going to be, you know, digital. Well, and you know, that's a good point. And of course, everybody knows who Malthus was and the Malthusians and all those other you know, they always forecasted gloom and doom. And the one component that they never could anticipate was technology. So technology has kept, you know, the food production right along with where we're going. And my biggest issue with futurists, I love them to death. I love listening to them. But, you know, the problem is you don't know what you don't know. And it's what you don't know that ends up, you know, changing the entire equation. So, so yeah, what if all the drudgery jobs, you know, become automated and there's just a ton of people now that are either on the street available to work? Well, what's going to happen? I mean, well, one thing I know is people are going to have a lot more leisure time. So does that mean that new leisure industries, you know, start taking place that will, you know, employ some of those? You just, so you don't know.
I would even challenge that a little bit, Jim, in that the advent of it has not.
Yeah, well, I love it because the company says, wow, that means you can do more work.
Right, exactly.
You can spend more time on the job.
Conceptually, though, you have jobs that even next year aren't even to go back.
Well, and clearly the people that are getting the squeeze the most are the blue collar types that, you know, used to be on the assembly line, you know, cranking bolts and things like that. And they're probably in the most difficult position to transition to something different. So that's, you know, that's well worth remembering. The bottom line is that it seems like the more strategic, more high touch, you know, the profession is or the skills requirement, the more likely that's going to be, you know, something that kind of occupation that can't go away. So professionals, you know, attorneys, God forbid attorneys, but even attorneys, you know, they're, you know, their tools, right. Their tools are becoming more automated so they can do their research quicker. So that probably means less paralegals and all, but yeah, absolutely. So, so doctors, dentists, you know, there's going to be people that, you know, are going to have a, you know, likelihood of a solid career. Again, a lot of the support staff and the people that might have supported that doctor could be automated. I really found this one interesting, that managers, director, and senior executives were going to be in demand continually, because you've got to have those people out there, you know, going through all the, whatever the computer tells you is the recommendation, to validate that, you know, from a human perspective, make the decision. You're not going to let computers, you know, make billion-dollar decisions, I hope. Although, you know, the program trading is going on Wall Street all the time, right? But allegedly, there's human beings behind that working on the algorithms and everything, correct? The big question that I've got, though, is that, you know, it takes a certain amount of experience and skills and, you know, hard knocks to be an effective senior executive. So how do they make the transition from, you know, business school to senior executive? So there's sort of a disconnect. There's got to be some kind of a apprenticeship or some kind of a way that you know, get that skill set. Maybe it's through private equity guys, I don't know. So the high touch, you know, high strategy, those occupations are probably still going to be in demand. But again, we don't know what we don't know. And it's really hard to predict because of that. All right, so let's come back to Gunny. So Urgent Fury, that was the code name for their invasion of Grenada. And if you all remember that, there was a number of issues at play. The Cubans were getting very active in Grenada. They were also active in some other Caribbean countries, and they were building a big airstrip that the brass thought was going to support large Russian, aircraft and everything. It's like, oh my God, our soft underbelly is being exposed. So they initiated Operation Urgent Fury. It was shortly right after the bombing of the Beirut barracks. And it was interesting because apparently, most of the Marines and the service folks thought that they were going to Lebanon. And instead, Reagan sent them down to Grenada, which was sort of a head fake. The problem was that was 30-something years ago. We didn't have the technology we do now. We didn't have the coordination of the different services that we do now. And the whole thing was a cluster flop. According to Gunny, he might have used a different term because there was no joint training, between the services. We prevailed, but we lost a number of SEALs that had to parachute into rough waters, and they actually drowned. They didn't get picked up properly. The Marines and the Rangers, I think, were the first ones in there. And, the Rangers secured an airport that was followed by, I guess it was the 82nd Airborne Division by a helicopter in the, the Blackhawks. You guys remember that? There was an accident landing those folks, and 2 or 3 of those Blackhawks just sort of careened into each other. And I don't know how many people were killed there. But anyhow, the bottom line was the military, decided that we got to do a better job of coordinating, our resources. So they came up with a really solid joint command. So